Hey everyone, I'm back. It was a little sparser week on the channel last week because I was in full Grammy voting mode. And I probably wrote like 400 emails in the course of a week. So I feel like my eyes are about to fall out of my face, but luckily I did get some reading done as well. Let's talk about it on this week's Reading Roundup. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. I'm a composer, but also a booktuber. You can find my music in The Wheel of Time, His Dark Materials, other book adaptations, and of course, The Hills of Tenchiko, the featured musical song in The Wheel of Time Season 3, Episode 6, now for your Grammy consideration in Best Song Written for Visual Media. As I mentioned, crazy week. I barely could keep up with stuff. I was going to 2 events a night. I was writing emails through the day, checking DMs, doing different posts, just kind of for your consideration posts, different videos for that. And somehow I did get a little reading done. I was working on music as well. But the channel did suffer a little this week. So thank you so much for your patience. I know it was lighter, but I promise to make it up to you. This week will be 2 videos. The following week, we'll be back to our 3. But if you like this kind of video, please like and subscribe. And now, onto the books. So I know a bunch of you have been reading along Ken Follett's newest book, Circle of Days. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, actually. And it's interesting what happens with anticipated reads. When you love an author and you're just like waiting with bated breath, counting the days, the weeks, the months until a book comes out, you're going to have your expectations sky high. There's no way around that, I think. Even if you try to go in with tempered expectations. Of course, there's the read along on the channel, which not too late to join because we got this going for the rest of the month now. But, it's hard for any book to meet that expectations. I will say, so far I'm liking it. I am at around chapter 11, so I'm a little behind everyone else. But I will catch up, I promise. So far, I like it. I'm not blown away by it, if that makes sense. So for people who love Ken Follett, I highly recommend you check it out. If this is your first Ken Follett book, and you're like, I want to see what the hype is all about, maybe not the best place to start. You'll probably like it because Ken Follett is extraordinarily consistent across his works, but I don't know if it's the best first impression of Follett. Does that make sense? I'll tell you why. This takes place around the making of the Stonehenge, which is a fascinating period of history. Of course, not a lot is known about it either. It's 5,000 years ago or whatever. I think that was the time period in the book. And, not a lot is known about people's way of life, their cultures, but a lot can be surmised. And I know Ken Follett is very good at doing his extensive research for things. I've seen that in his Century trilogy, and he is a master at that. So, the fact that he was willing to tackle a subject matter that is not as known about, we know that there's going to be more fiction than the historical aspect of historical fiction, right? However, I thought the characters are pretty cool. I'm really enjoying them. But of course, they have a simpler life that is very different to ours. Their kind of main concerns are survival, right? And they're more of a nomadic culture. It's not something that we can necessarily relate to. And even the way their thought processes about the day-to-day is a little bit more simplified. So it's harder to get really into the nuances of characters when characters are like that, right? But that's just, that's a symptom of the time period. It's not necessarily a symptom of Ken Follett's writing. Does that make sense? I think Seft is a very interesting character. I like how he's already kind of apart from his family and other people, in his community. He's much more of a problem solver. I get the feeling they're setting him up to be one of the people who helps to create the Stonehenge, but I'm not really sure. Let's see what happens. It's early enough that anything could happen, but I'm enjoying it so far. If you're on this read along, I would love to know, are you enjoying it as much as I am? Do you feel like it could be better? I would love to know from you. I know some people really enjoyed it. Some people are mixed to positive. I know we had one DNF as well on the Discord so far, but we are chugging along. So let's see how the rest of this goes. I'm excited to make this a priority for this week. I also got a chance to dip into a little bit of this book I was very excited about because I've heard so much about Ray Bradbury. I was one of the few people in high school who did not get a chance to read Fahrenheit 451. Because I was on a different track. I think I was reading East of Eden. You could choose different tracks of things you wanted to read. I chose East of Eden. So I never got a chance to read Fahrenheit 451. And therefore, I also never got a chance to pick up his other book that I thought would be really good for spooky season, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Now I'm about 50 pages in, so roughly, what, a quarter or so? I think it's, or maybe a fifth of the way through, 20%. Not a whole lot has happened yet, but man, the atmosphere is off the charts. Ray Bradbury makes you feel the sense of slow dread in this, and I can see where Stephen King gets that kind of small town vibe from, in his writing. You can tell the influence is there. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of it. It's a little too early to say how I feel about the book as a whole, because again, not a lot has happened in the plot side of things, but you're getting to know these two boys and kind of their relationship, one of their relationships with their dad and all this stuff. And, yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm going to just leave it there. But yeah, I'll keep you posted on how this goes. I think it's going to be a short read, so might even finish it this week, depending on how all the other outreach and related things go. But we shall see. The other book, and I gotta say, I think this was my favorite read of the week so far, and it's evident by how many pages I've actually crushed in this book. To Green Angel Tower, Tad Williams, Part 2. This is the final entry in Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, of course, until his subsequent Last King of Austin Art sequel series, I believe. I'm going to be reading along with Philip Chase. Actually, we were talking about doing a buddy read of that at some point. But man, I'm doing this as a giant read along with Booked and Busy on her channel. Gavin Reeds is on there. Philip Chase, of course. Elliot Brooks. A lot of kind of bigger booktubers than I. So my lowly self is getting to hang out with them all in the chat. It's really fun. But I got to say, this is far and away my favorite book. And I am about, as I mentioned, it was such a busy week. I think I'm around page 360 in this. Not bad, considering this is pretty dense fantasy in a way. There's a lot of names and things to keep a track of, but I feel like there's something brewing that is going to really just like be an avalanche in the last couple hundred pages. You can see where the Wheel of Time actually got its influences as well. You could see where John Gwynne got his influences. Like, I can see some of the things. And again, anything I say will really spoil probably the plot elements, but you could see those influences pretty apparent. So it's nice to see where the primordial version of the prototypical version of that fantasy was this kind of bridge series. So yeah, I'm so freaking excited. I'm like, after I film these videos, I think I'm going to just dip back into this because I can't wait to find out what happens at the end here. But very exciting times ahead. Let's talk a little bit about what I'm going to read. As I mentioned, I'm going to read probably these 3 books. I don't think there's going to be much time for anything else. I know I have Fever Dream by George R. R. Martin. I have Haunting of Hill House. They're buddy reads that I, on the Discord that I'm going to be doing. I might have to hold off until I can catch up on Circle of Days and then finish Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and then maybe even finish this guy. Then I can kind of clear the decks and go into spooky season in earnest. So that's kind of the plan there. Let's talk a little bit about the channel, of which, as I mentioned, there's not much really going on. I'm just pulling up my list here. Yeah, I just did the Reading Roundup last week. I wanted to do a monthly wrap-up. Unfortunately, I was not able to get to it. And thanks again for your patience. I will be doing that this week. So Reading Roundup is on Tuesday, like always. And then on Thursday, I will have that monthly wrap-up where I talk about everything that happened in September, kind of talk about the books I read, the books I partially completed, and then kind of rank the ones that I actually completed, talk a little bit about that, what happened in the month. Let's talk a little bit about the music front. Now, the music front actually had quite a bit to talk about. As I mentioned, the Grammys voting has begun, and I'll tell you, this process, I'm becoming very enlightened in how much time and honestly money, resources, and things go into this kind of thing. I mean, I know of other people who have albums and things like that in the mix. They're traveling all over the country, going to different chapter meetings, meeting people. Because meeting people in person is always the best way to really get to know someone. And I've been going to 2 events a night, so I am pretty exhausted. And of course, you're getting all sorts of messages from people. You want to listen to everything. So I've listened to tens of hours of music this last week, really like to get to know them, and you kind of trade links and this and that. So it's been a lot of that, making content for my Instagram to kind of get it out to more Recording Academy members. I'm going to be co-hosting a mixer this Wednesday, and inviting some members there too, and just doing the thing. It's been exhausting, but it's been fun. It's been a really nice first real foray into this side of things. Projects are starting up, which is really great. And I have an announcement, actually. This was the most random thing to happen to me in recent months. I wrote a track in 2018. Now, I pitched it for a couple trailers through a friend of mine who has these connections and, everything. And didn't go anywhere. And that was that. I get an email this week saying that my music was in the new Five Nights at Freddy's 2 cinematic trailer, like the trailer. That is pretty insane. So I'm leaving the link below if you want to check it out. But I processed some piano sounds, did some crazy stuff in it. And yeah, you just never know. I swear, like, nothing is ever lost in art. I truly believe that. Like, something is just waiting to be rediscovered again. I think, like, anyone here who's a budding, author or a creative or a musician or whoever, whatever you choose to do in life, like, I really believe that no effort is wasted because it sets you on a path that brings you to where you are, right? And there's things that, I've written years ago that suddenly find their way, or a connection I made years ago that suddenly comes to fruition. Just never know. You just can only do your best every day, and one foot in front of the other. So I'm very grateful for that. And so, yeah, pretty interesting week. How was your week, you guys? Did you have a good week? Anything cool happen? Like, let me know in the comments. I always love keeping this a dialogue, And I'm Nikhil with Shelf-Esteem. Thank you for being here. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. I will see you, as always, on Thursday with the monthly wrap-up and more videos to come. Take care.